I have to tell the story of Bubba's wallet. Now, they're already laughing. Here's what happened. Bubba lost his wallet at a gas station, I guess in Pennsylvania, and he went to a seance with Michael Shane. And in the seance, Bubba asked Michael's guides where his wallet was. And I guess they said parts of it had been dispersed different places. So he was like, okay. A week later, he goes to a seance with Gary Mannion, and Gary's guide says to Bubba, Bubba, did you lose your wallet? Bubba says yes. And then you heard like a crackling sound in the cabinet. And the next thing you know, all of these apports fall out of the ceiling. So the guide says, turn on the light and look at it. So Bubba turns on the light, he looks at it, and there's like his credit card, some money, his driver's license is all there, but no wallet. So Bubba says, I didn't get my wallet. So they say, wait a minute. They go back in the cabinet and they crinkle around, and you hear that crinkling noise, and then bump, the wallet comes falling right out of the ceiling. Now, we asked where this came from, and the guide said, well, the reason why it took us so long and it didn't all come at once was because the pieces of the wallet had been distributed through different people, and they had to find all the pieces to bring back to Bubba. And the other thing that we asked the guides was whether or not, well, what would happen to the people who had taken all the stuff. And they said that they would just think they lost it or misplaced it or something like that. But that was the most unusual apport I've ever seen.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, there were so many highlights. I guess the two that really were so amazing for me is that one of the seances, actually two of them, Gary was doing, sort of duplicate seances with very, very different outcomes. And so there was a healing, one of the healing seances that I went to, and we were standing in the dark, and Gary was in the cabinet. And I had the pleasure of zip tying him to the chair, which was a first experience for me. And we stood there, and there was an absolutely remarkable feeling of very powerful hands, working on my back, working on certain spots that Spirit knew that, were bothering me. And it was incredible. There was a very powerful vibration. The hands just vibrated so powerfully, and there was such an incredibly deep, energetic sensation in my back. It didn't hurt, but it was the most powerful massage I have ever gotten, and I've gotten quite a few. Deep tissue, shiatsu. It was really remarkable. And the other was that he gave a message. There was a message given to one of the participants having to do with her grandfather, and then there was he was experimenting. They were experimenting with a box, with a precipitation box, and lo and behold, open the precipitation box, and there was. I have an image of it that I can, put in the chat. In the precipitation box was a precipitated photo of her grandfather. She had one on her phone, and it was absolutely remarkable. It was like, Hoyt Robinette or something like that, but even more intimate and recognizable. And I know that Gary has been, that a lot of stuff has really been developing very quickly for Gary's physical mediumship. And, this precipitation stuff isn't something that he's been known for. And yet, here it is. And it was absolutely remarkable. I feel very privileged to have, been in these seances.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I got to spend the week with Gary, and there's multiple experiences that were just incredible. which was interesting because I really wanted to get some healing in my back and my neck. And it was like every time that there was a healing session, I got called for some reason out of the blue. So that was kind of interesting. What really I've always wanted to see was ectoplasm in real form. And Gary did an experiment where they showed different lights. And one of them was white, and then he had ectoplasm come out of his mouth for a couple seconds. They zipped up everything. And then they turned the light on blue, and then he had blue. The color of the ectoplasm came out of his mouth was blue. It was he wanted red, but couldn't get the red bulb on, but the blue bulb came on. So, and it was blue in appearances, which was totally fascinating. And the other thing is I had a healing. My dad came through, and a voice appeared upon on my left side. I couldn't understand it at first. I had to ask her to repeat it for 3 times because it was kind of like rough sounding, but it was actually a spirit voice talking to me, explaining things to me, which was fascinating. There was a lot of other things, apports, they would do this clicking sound and they would put an apport in your hand. And then this spinning of the cabinet when Gary was in it, you would see his feet down there and the cabinet would just spin like wild to, I guess, get the vortex of the energy going. I mean, it was just fascinating, incredible experiences, but I'll give the floor to somebody else.
So look, you can read a lot of books, but it doesn't replace the firsthand experience. I had mentioned the wonderful experience that I had with Gary and his team earlier this year, and that continued recently with the seances that we just went to. So the power that is felt by his team and everyone that's in that room, I mean, it has to be felt in person. And once that's felt, it removes any doubt from your mind that what the power of the spirit can do. Beyond having these experiences, it's also important that to know that Gary is just a very down-to-earth and personable individual.
Right. But before we went, I really wanted to see precipitation. And Gary, I was saying to Gary, please, it's all I want to see. Because when I went to Lilydale a few years ago, I fell absolutely in love with that form of mediumship. So I was begging him, please, Gary, oh, my heart would be breaking all the way to Lilydale. Can't sit with the Hoyt Robinette. And then he precipitates in a room. In one of the pictures, the hair we got in full light, the hair just forms. The face just forms, the color comes around. In my hands while I'm watching it, I was so quick, I couldn't video it. Then when my mum came through, she had no glasses and I'm handing it around, showing everyone. And then all of a sudden her glasses just formed. So the medium that I thought I was going to see precipitation through, my favorite form of mediumship, was our own very Gary.
So Gary was the first seance I ever sat in on. And my father passed away a couple of years ago, and when his guide comes through that ushers in spirits, Miss Barnaby, the first thing she said was Donald, which is my first name. She said, Donald, I have Don here. And that was my dad. And she said, Donald? And I said, yes. She said, Edward? I said, yes. And she said, Woody. And I said, yes. She said, you have the exact same name. Yes. And then she said, January 4th, 2017, and that was when he died. She said September 9th, 1934, and that was when he was born. So, and all that information come out, and then she cut out, and then I got a precipitation drawing of him from a picture I thought of him from our wedding. And and I got a drawing of him. And my mom's name was on it, my dog's name that had passed away was on it, my husband's name was.
And I've been to a whole bunch of them, and there's such a variety of things that go on at Gary's seances. We had a full manifestation come out of the cabinet and stand on the glow tab, and you could just see the whole draped being. Big, huge men that go 270 pounds, 80 pounds, lift them up off the ground in the center of the room and not let them down for a long time and rock them. Arms coming out of the very top of a very tall tent. I mean, just amazing. But I got to hold my brother's hands and it quickly reached down, grabbed my other hand and squeezed in. It's Gary, your gift is remarkable, and who comes through you and the gifts that they bring is so healing in so many ways. And the healing sessions are fantastic. It's amazing what Abraham does. Thank you.
Yes, I wanted to say that probably one of the more surprising things, and I also have gone up and touched hands from the cabinet, and it was my father's hand that I shook, which was wonderful. But I think the surprising thing for me in one of the last seances was I'm sitting there in my chair. All of a sudden, I feel these two hands take my chair and push me into the middle of the room. And they pushed me into the middle of the room. They rocked me back and forth. They were touching the top of my head, and there were like hands all over the place. So it was just wild because they were spinning me in all kinds of stuff in the dark. Fortunately, somebody helped me get my chair back to the right place.
Yeah, we had the same phenomena here where two people were lifted and they floated towards each other, and they both not aware that there was someone else in the room, and then the knees touched and they both were squealing because they go, oh my god, I'm in the air and I feel something else. So it was very funny.
Probably the best advice if you are developing is don't have any preconceived ideas. So, like with the precipitation, we've had one precipitation that didn't go very well once in an experimental week. Aside from that, I've never tried sim precipitation, never had an interest in it. I find it very interesting, but never had interest to do it myself. I was happy with kind of Mrs. Barnaby bringing through loved ones. I was happy where that was going. And then we started getting reports, which was quite nice. And literally when we went to America this time, the first seance we did there, literally I think about 10 minutes before we started the seance, somebody said, I've got my precipitation box. Are you okay if it's in the room? I was like, sure, yeah. And that kicked off the precipitation. And then I think it was 7 out of the 10 seances we did had precipitations. But literally it's something I never planned to happen. Obviously there must have been something in that person's energy who had the box that kickstarted it for me.
Yeah, I was also going to say that when it happened up here in the Lilydale area, and this whole kind of area, Pennsylvania, Lilydale, all of this, the Great Lakes region is where the precipitation started for the Bang sisters and the Campbell's brothers. So you weren't only influenced by a person, but you were influenced by the environment because it's been going on here. And Gary, I have to say, you're the first person that I know of that's precipitated family members since the Bang sisters. Because Hoyt doesn't do that. Hoyt just brings through the spirit guides. But the interesting thing about your precipitation and Hoyt's precipitation is that it looks more like photographs, where the Bang sisters and Campbell's brothers looked more like the pastel drawings they did at that time.
I mean, it was lovely seeing everyone again. I loved with the physical thing that they did try new things. And things that, like with the precipitation things, I was never expecting in a million years. If I predicted where my mediumship would go, that would never have been on the list. I would never have thought that would happen with me. So I like that they are still trying new things, and it's kind of a step on from what they've previously done. So it's gone from Mrs. Barnaby bringing through loved ones, bringing in communication from loved ones, to now letting the loved ones speak for themselves, to now actually giving images of the loved ones, which is still in its infancy, even though we're getting some amazing results. So it'd be interesting to see where that will go. So that's what I love, that it kind of, every time I seem to go somewhere new, it kind of kickstarts that they're going to try something new. But what my favorite bit is that I get to hear from a lot of circles who are developing themselves and actually starting to get things with themselves. So we're getting a lot of things like materializations and stuff happening in private circles. So it'd be interesting to now see with precipitation where that's going to go for other circles too.
How does the energy of Lilydale affect you?
It's a great area. It is definitely a great area as far as the energy is concerned. Sadly, whenever you put humans, and it's not just Lilydale, if you look at the SNU in the UK, there's always politics. But the area itself is amazing, which obviously kickstarted what the team are doing. It is a great area to be. But even down in Schenectady as well, the energy there is really amazing as well. The building we use there, they like to do a lot with not just the Western teams, but like the Native Americans and stuff as well, which is really interesting.
Did you meet any of the Native American mediums while you were over there?
No, we had their teams come through, which was verified by the Lakotas. I think it's the right code.
Neil's
I've not
talked
met
about
Neil.
it.
Neil's, yeah. And actually, Neil got in one of our seances. Neil, one of the Lakota team came through and actually gave him a huge report, huge healing stone. Oh, there he is.
Hey, Neil. Lovely
We're
to
talking
see you.
about you.
I heard my name, so I had to join in.
Neil,
Yeah,
would you like to give us a quick rundown on the last lot of seances? What was the highlight for you?
The highlight for me was the joining up of the various teams. It was amazing. I could sense the vibrations of Gary's team, of Warfield Moose's team, of Vinnie Nar's team, which are both Native American teams. It was amazing. And also Bill Bolt's team. So there were four different teams all joining together. And I asked during the last seance, which was at my house on a Wednesday, I asked Jimmy if in fact there were 4 teams blending, and he said, yes, indeed there were. I mean, they're learning to cross work with each other, which is really exciting. There was one time in Schenectady where I felt Warfield's team there, and I felt like feminine hands, which felt like Warfield's grandmother in spirit, grab my hand with her 2 hands, and then one hand goes like this, and she put a large heart-shaped stone right into my hand. And that was a definite blending of Gary's team with Warfield's Native American Lakota team. So it was amazing. I'm busy getting Julie Adriani and Michael Shane ready to do a double-header seance at my house. So I set up 2 cabinets. Michael's got his cabinet. Julie's got her cabinet. They're in there as we speak, kind of meditating to prepare, because the seance is in about half hour. So I'm busy. But I stopped by really briefly to say hello.
Well, Neil, we want to have you come in as a guest and tell us more about your experiences, because
I would love
you have
to.
got amazing experiences.
Certainly,
and we look forward to that.
I'm greatly
You and I will
blessed.
talk about that. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you, Neil, for coming on. Gloria, you had a question.
Yes, Gary, we've talked about how in the past in the States, the great mediums and events seemed to be around the Great Lakes. And it occurs to me, because it was the Great Lakes, that maybe those were Native American holy grounds. And I was wondering if you might be picking up some of that energy when you're in those locations, and if you got any sense of that at all.
It's definitely possible. Me personally, I don't know, because I don't know enough about the Native Americans. And simple minds make great mediums. But actually, if we look at sometimes different places actually are better suited for certain types of phenomena. So I do psychic surgery, but actually most psychic surgery where they actually cut skin and things like that happens in Brazil. So it must be something about that area that's best suited for that type of phenomena. Even though it can be done elsewhere, it's much stronger there and much more accepted there. So it must be that the Great Lakes in America must be a hive for precipitation.
Thank you.
Susan Barnes?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, to answer that question, that Lilydale technically is an island. And it was an island that they did Native American ceremonies on. And there actually were, I found one, I don't know much info on him now. When I get more info, I'll come on and tell everyone. But I found out there was a Native American medium here in Lilydale in the 1800s that was doing materializations. So yeah, what I'm doing right now is I'm researching, because Karen and Inga and I are trying to put together a physical mediumship conference here in Lilydale. And so I'm researching all of the old mediums from Lilydale, which nobody's done, to find out all of the physical things that they did.